Hello and welcome back to Ease Your Quarantine with Literature, where at the end of October 2020, and unfortunately this pandemic hasn't ended yet, and the restrictions that governments all over the world are setting up in order to fight this pandemic has led to a massive quoting of George Orwell 1984 on the social media. So we are going to set an episode of Ease Your Quarantine with Literature on George Orwell's 1984 novel. Are you ready? So let's go. George Orwell was born in India in 1903 and his real name was Eric Blair. He attended prestigious boarding schools in the UK, but he didn't go to college. Once he finished school, he went back to Burma and he was a policeman from the British Empire. When he came back to England due to his health, he dedicated himself to be a writer. George Orwell has always been keen on seeing the conditions of lower classes in England, and he refused every totalitarian regime in Europe. He wrote two novels about it, Animal Farm and 1984. Animal Farm is against communist regime and it is a rhetoric novel. So he's using animals to resend to the human role. 1984 is a novel against every totalitarian regime. It is considered a dystopian novel, which is a speculative fiction where the author imagines a society that is dehumanizing and frightening. It is the antonym of utopia, which means a perfect society. What is dystopian fiction? Dystopian fiction requires high levels of imagination and it is used to warn humanity about the dangers of current social or political structure. Orwell is concerned with totalitarian regimes, so Nazi, fascist and also Soviet communism. What are the characteristics of a dystopian novel? Every dystopian novel have items of government control, items of environmental destruction, technological control, survival, and the loss of individualism. So where do we find these elements in 1984? So talking about 1984, element of dystopian fiction, government control. In the book, there is a fictional dictator called Big Brother. He is part of the party and it controls every aspect of the citizen lives with technology. The environmental destruction is present because the book is set in London and the city is described as a depressing and dilapidated city. Elements of survival. There is a sort of war in the book about people don't know much in reality, but the city is bombed every now and then and citizens are blown apart into pieces. Loss of individualism. To be part of the society in the book and avoid labor camp, people have to listen to the propaganda every day and they are not allowed to have friends, lovers, and it's very hard to be focused on your own thoughts. What is the plot of 1984? The protagonist of the book is Winston Smith. He is living according to the rules of the regime until he starts to write a diary, expressing how much he hates his existence without friends or hobbies. Writing a diary is a crime punished by death from the regime. Winston, in his diary, tries to imagine a different life. The government has destroyed all the history books, so he has no way to imagine how exactly life was before the party. Winston is both attracted and afraid of a colleague of his, Julia. He hates her because she's pretty and he can't have her, and he is also afraid of her because he fears that she is the kind of people that would turn him to the police. And at some time, Julia slips Winston a note with written, "I love you." So everything changes. It's not easy for them to stay in private with cameras and spies all around, but they manage to meet in the countryside and they start a love affair, which is dangerous because they could be caught and sent into labor camps. Therefore, this kind of relationship is exciting. Winston wants to start a real revolt against the government. He decides to trust O'Brien, an inner member of the party. He confesses to him that he and Julia are rebels. At first, O'Brien tells him that he is also a rebel and gives the two lovers a book that all the rebels read. Short after, the thought police arrive in Winston's house and arrest Winston and Julia and bring them to the Ministry of Love in order to interrogate them. In the Ministry of Love and by the Ministry of Love, Winston is tortured by all means. They break his bones and teeth, they give him electric shock, and they lead him to starvation, etc., etc. Winston confesses everything, and he betrays Julia. O'Brien comes in at this point and tells Winston what the government really wants, which is total power over people's mind. It's not about controlling mind. This is not what the government wants. It's only about exercising power over people's mind. In room 101, the Ministry of Law finally break Winston totally. They lock his face into a cage and threaten him to release rats in front of his face. Since he's got a rat phobia, he screams, "Do it to Julia, not to me." So after that, the police release Julia and Winston because they broke them completely and in all their integrity, so they don't care about them anymore. Winston and Julia, in the end, are just two people broken apart and don't want to think about rebellion anymore. They can't even love each other anymore. At the end of the book, Winston is not thinking about rebellion, and he sits at a cafe listening to the news apathetically, and the books end with the words, "He loved Big Brother." The focus on the book is mainly on the fact that people can be broken down and believe whatever they are told. For example, 2 + 2 = 5. Although the message is that it's not that easy. In fact, the government in the book took a lot of time and effort in order to break into Winston's mind. The terms Orwellian comes from the concern the author had about the ability of words to shape thoughts. In 1984, the government controls people's lives and speeches by controlling them everywhere, scaring them with punishment if they don't follow the rules, and by the propaganda, but also with the fact that historical facts has been manufactured into the Ministry of Truth, wiping all historical awareness and critical thoughts. In order to express that, Orwell uses also techniques with names. To demonstrate how language shapes thoughts, the government facilities have specific names. For example, the Ministry of Peace is the military service. The Ministry of Truth is where false facts are manufactured for the propaganda. Joy camp are labor camp. The Ministry of Love is where prisons are tortured. This is a way of corrupting thoughts by continuously repeating things like war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is freedom. All of this leads to the word doublethink. Now, doublethink is a kind of cognitive dissonance where people tend to not listen to their own thoughts, but they prefer to accept what they are told, in this case, by the government. The issue of control in 1984 is well expressed. Okay, in 1949, when Orwell published the book, the world had seen 2 world wars and the rise of totalitarian regime in Spain, Italy, Germany, and obviously in the USSR. At the same time, medical advantages and progress in mass media were made. Now, Orwell questions the way totalitarianism used progress in order to control people. The control through the mass media. Mass media used to broadcast party propaganda, continuously exhausting people's mind and discouraging independent thought. Medical advances on nervous system are used to control people physically. Even a facial twitch of the face can lead to an arrest. And people are forced to do mass morning exercise in order to keep them continuously exhausted. The ability of mass media acquired to reach many people at the same time is also used to rewrite history and control information. The progress in technology is used to constantly control the people and to create a fearsome machinery in order to induct more pain during torture. The idea of revolution ideas into 1984 are not easy as you may think. When Wilson commits his first acts of independent revolution, that are writing a journal, buying a decorative paperweight, or the sexual relationship with Julia, he gets the idea that the revolution is possible. He looks at the lower classes, noting that they might have the number and the strength to beat the party, but they have been manipulated by the party for too long. But in reality, according to Winston, the party started from a revolution that took place in the 60s, and the party claimed that it's still not over. So rather than encouraging people to revolution, Orwell is encouraging people to look at revolutionary ideas with critical and independent thoughts. Many people say that Orwell has been in some kind of clairvoyant, so that he foresaw what would have happened actually in the future. Now, this is technically a big mistake. When we talk about dystopian fiction, we talk about elements that a writer explores, but they are elements from the present. So when we say that something into the book is predictive into a dystopian book, we are completely forgetting the fact that a dystopian book always starts from elements of the present. So the author is criticizing things that already exist. Then we can also obviously discuss the fact that technology now is controlling us much more, and privacy, internet, the use of social media, localization on our cell phones, all of these things actually have implemented the ability of people to control us, not necessarily the government. But what we have to remember is that when Orwell wrote 1984, a form of control through technology over the people was already existing. He didn't foresee anything. This is what dystopian fiction is. It's very hard to understand. They always start from elements that already exist, and they are obviously exaggerated. Margaret Atwood, for example, wrote The Handmaid's Tale, and it's always about government controls, especially government control over women. But she is starting from a starting point that is that women in society have always been controlled. What she says is that whatever she wrote in the book has actually happened at least once in human history. So dystopian novels are not predictory novels. They don't predict anything, hopefully, because they are always about, environmental destruction, loss of individualism. None of this is predictive. It's just to warn us to pay attention, to not make mistakes that could lead to some kind of a world that is just for the moment and hopefully only in the mind of the author. So thank you for being with us. This has been a very short episode, but I mean, the idea of Orwellian is absolutely super difficult. So if you want something, you can always come up to the school. The school is open and we are having lesson up to 9:30 or 10. And you can have some private lesson about English literature or even English courses. So thank you for watching the video. Please don't forget to press like our Facebook page, like our Instagram page. And if you need any English lesson, you can always call our numbers that you can find on the various social media page. Thank you very much and bye bye.